What up, everyone? Coming at you today with some fork assembly. Let's jump right into it. As you can tell, I've got the forks completely disassembled, and here are the essentials needed to rebuild them. Pivotworks came through with the bushings and seals, and Maxima hooked it up with the oil. So big thank you to those guys. So of course the assembly process is going to be the same for both the right and the left fork. I'm just going to bring you through the assembly on one fork here. And before we get started, I'm going to make sure I've got all the bushings and seals I'll need for this rebuild. So I'm going to open this thing up. Alright, definitely looks like everything is here. Got an even number of bushings and seals for each style. It's amazing how many pieces Pivotworks provides you with. Couple of things to check before reassembling the forks. On the lower fork tube here, it's common to have nicks or scars, and those in turn will cause the seals to leak. So I'll run my finger down the fork tube, and if anything hangs up, it's got to be buffed out or fixed somehow. So this fork tube feels pretty good. It is ready to go. Now we're going to check out the piston rod on the damper. It should slide in and out of the damper freely. If there's any sort of hang up, that's something you got to check into. And lastly, the adjusters should click through the positions. You'll be able to hear a click as you're turning the adjuster. Now that I've got everything inspected, I'm going to pull the bushings and seals off the lower fork tube. You just simply expand the bushing and you can slide it off the tube. And as I'm pulling these parts off, I'm going to set them in the order they came off of. The seal I'm pulling off right now is the actual oil seal. And the one further down is the dust seal. Just going to wipe things down and get it ready for some new parts here. Here I'm going to match up the new parts with the old ones. Got an oil seal. Here is the dust seal. Looks like the correct one. Alright, we've got two bushings, an oil seal, and a dust seal. And as far as the clip and washer, they don't provide those since those really are not wear items. Here is the order that everything is going to be installed in. And as you're sliding the seals on, you're definitely going to want to use a fork bullet or like a little sleeve that goes over the end. As you're sliding the seals on, this will protect the seals from being cut by the grooves in the fork tube here. And if you don't have one of these, you can always wrap tape around the top of the tube here. It's mainly these two grooves right here that are going to cut up the seals. We're going to pop that on and apply some oil here so that way everything slides on a bit easier. Going to bust out the Maxima oil and fill up the cap. That way we can dab the parts in it. Just going to dab my finger here in the oil. Give things a nice little coat. So the dust seal goes with the spring side facing down. Now we've got the clip. And then the oil seal. This is definitely the most important seal of the whole fork. So you want to make sure it goes on correctly and take your time putting it on. On this one, the spring side is going to be facing up. We've got the spring side right here. Just going to slide it on like so. Good idea to apply some oil to the inside of the seal as well. Now with the seals and the snap ring on, I can slide off the bullet and pop on the washer and the two bushings. And as far as these bushings go, they're the same either way. So it doesn't matter which way they go on. Just going to expand the bushing and pop it into place. With everything assembled here, I'm going to move on to the damper. The damper has one bushing down here that can be replaced. This bushing seems like it's a bit more difficult to remove. So I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver to expand it and hopefully pop it off the damper here. Kind of destroyed that one taking it off, but that was really the only option. Gonna make sure this new one matches up. Looks like it's the right one. And going on should be quite a bit easier. Alright, next up there's a little seal up on top of the damper here that we can replace. It's got a little pick that we can get underneath the seal and pull it down. And this should be the new seal right here. And that is it for the damper. I'm going to move on to the outer fork tube. So there's a little wear ring here on the end of the tube that PivotWorks gave me a replacement for. Just going to go ahead and pop that off and replace it. Looks like there's some dirt underneath the clip here. Good opportunity to clean that up. This one is pretty straightforward. Just pop it right into place. Looks like this assembly has 3 O-rings on it. One here on the bottom, one halfway up, and one at the top. Unfortunately, this one's got 2 bushings on it, so hopefully they come off easy. Not too difficult. Definitely easier than the last one. So there were 2 bushings and 3 O-rings on this set. I'm going to go ahead and find the replacement ones for that. Looks like we've got the correct bushings here. And these should be the seals. So I'm going to go ahead and install the bushings first. Just like the other bushings and seals, I'm going to oil everything up, and the bushings can go on either way. They are not directional. Well guys, that is it for replacing all the bushings and seals. Time to put this fork together. Now the lower fork tube and the upper fork tube are going to be installed onto each other. Before we slide them into place, I'm going to make sure everything has a good layer of oil on it. Now I'm just going to simply slide the 2 pieces together. And then once you get to the oil seal, that will need to be pressed in. So for right now, I'm just going to start pressing it in by hand. So there's fork seal drivers out there that allow you to push the seal into place. But what I've got here is a piece of PVC pipe, obviously cut open. And this is what I've been using for years to press in fork seals. Once you have the oil seal pressed in enough, you'll be able to see a little groove where the ring snaps into. So right now, we are going to pop this ring into position. As soon as you get that ring into place, you'll hear a pop and it'll sit inside that groove. And then the dust seal can be slid down into its position. Time to do some work on the dampening rod. Alright, what I'm going to do here is extend the dampening rod piston all the way down and add some oil in through the top. For this bike, the recommended amount is 6.6 ounces. So I've got a mixing cup here and it's got ounce measurements on the side here. Just going to simply pour this into the damper, and then I'll need to bleed the air out of the system. Alright, to bleed it, I'm going to pump the piston slowly several times, and this should get all the air out of it. Next up, I'm going to set the oil height within the damper. So it needs to be 42 to 47 millimeters above this mark. And how I'm going to check that is grabbing a piece of cardboard and sliding it down to right here. And however much the oil comes up on that piece of cardboard, I'll base the oil height off of that and adjust it up or down. Alright, I've got my strip of cardboard here. Just going to slide it down in the damper until it stops. And by the way, this is with the piston rod extended all the way down. So right there is where it stopped. Just going to pull it up and measure that. So we're looking at a little over 42 millimeters right now. I'm just going to add a touch of oil. That way it's well within that recommended range. Now it's on to installing the fork cap into the damper. Just going to apply some oil to the seals here and the bushings as well. Alright, now with the piston all the way extended out, I'm going to slide in the fork cap. Definitely going to take a little bit of wiggling to get it into place. The recommended torque spec on the fork cap is 22 foot-pounds for this bike. I don't have a way of torquing it, so I am just going to have to get it close enough by hand. What I've got to do now is I'm going to compress the damper piston about 4 inches several times, and this will bleed the damper assembly. Once that is done, I'm going to turn the compression adjuster counterclockwise to the softest position. So now there's going to be a little extra oil left in this upper chamber that I'll need to drain out of this hole. And as I've got the damper upside down here, I'm pumping the piston rod to get all that extra oil out. Just giving this thing a wipe down, and then going to inspect the piston one more time. Alright, a few things to check for on the damper. First of all, when you compress the piston, it should return on its own to the full length. Looks good. And also, once the piston is compressed, there shouldn't be any oil on the shaft here. And if there's any oil on the shaft, that is going to need some attention. And the last thing, the lock nut on the bottom of the damper will have to be spun up to the top of the threads here. Alright, I've got the damper assembly all finished up. It is time to slide it into the fork tube. It's always nice to put the fork in a vise for this step, and this is where a set of soft jaws on a vise would be handy. I'm too cheap for that, so I'm just using a couple blocks of wood here. Definitely don't want to forget to install the fork spring. That would not be good. With that in place, I'm gonna grab the damper here and slide it all the way through. At this point, I'll need to compress the fork spring, putting pressure on the damper from the top. And this will push the dampener rod out of the bottom of the fork here. Once I have the rod pushed out of the bottom of the fork, I'm going to slide a wrench underneath the rod, and that will hold it into place. So there are companies that do make a tool for holding the rod out of the bottom of the fork, or you can make your own, but I've always found that a wrench works just fine too. Now I've got the adjustment rod to slide into place. Just gonna turn it until it seats all the way. There we go. And now for the adjuster. Just gonna line up the flat part right here with the rod. All right, there it is. Now I'm just gonna spin it onto the threads here. The torque spec on this particular bike is 16 foot-pounds for the adjuster nut. Just gonna compress the fork spring again by pushing on the damper. Carefully slide the wrench out and then slowly let the damper into the fork here. Try not to damage the threads at all. And next up is going to be tightening down the nut to 51 foot-pounds. The last couple of things to do here are to add oil and tighten down the fork cap. Once again, I'll be using the mixing cup to measure out the oil and pour it into the fork. For the CR250, each fork takes 13.7 ounces of oil. So I'm pulling the upper fork tube down so I have room to pour in the oil. Nothing too complicated here. Just add in the oil to the fork. The last step in the process is to slide the fork tube up and tighten down the fork cap. It's a good idea to have some oil here on the O-ring. That'll just make assembly go a little bit smoother. To help with tightening down the fork cap, I'm going to slide the bottom triple onto the fork and get it tightened down. I know if I don't tighten down the fork cap right now, I'll probably forget and put this bike together and the fork will fall apart on me. Just got my fork cap wrench here and I'm going to cinch down the fork cap. The recommended torque is 25 foot-pounds, so not really too tight. Alrighty guys, that is going to do it for the left fork leg. Enjoy the time lapse as I put together the right fork. I am pretty stoked. Forks are all done and everything went together very smoothly. These things are ready to go. Gotta give a big thank you to Pivotworks and Maxima for helping out with this build. Go show them some love by clicking over to their websites using the links down in the description and doing some shopping with them. I'll also link some of the specialty tools I used throughout the video, such as the steel bullet and the fork cap wrench down there as well. Always appreciate you guys watching the video, and I will catch up with you all in a few days. Take care, everyone.